Welcome all to the session on refreshing decisions dashboards. In this session, we will look at the following steps that can refresh the dashboards. These steps can be categorized into three. The first one is refreshing a report by folder event, refreshing a report by key event, and the third one is refreshing a report by folder and key event, which is further used for group and for user. Send refresh report by folder event. This step takes in the folder ID of the dashboard that holds a report and which we want to refresh automatically. Send refresh report by folder event for group does the same thing as the previous step, but the changes are seen only for a specific group that we provide. Similarly, send refresh report by folder event for user works similar to the previous steps, but it refreshes the dashboard for only that user whose user ID is provided in the properties panel. Let us see all of this in action. We have created a designer project for refreshing decisions dashboard, which holds the following flows. Add an account and refresh using the folder. It also has an account information dashboard that holds the report of the account information. The report that we are using is account information report, which fetches the data from account data source. We edit, add an account and refresh using folder flow and use the following folder event steps by searching for these steps in the toolbox. I am trying to make changes to the account information report by adding a new account. The properties that this new account takes is an email address, name, first name, etc., member of which group, and a password. So now I connect this to the send refresh by report folder event. For this step, I need to pick a folder ID. Now this folder ID is the folder ID of the dashboard that is holding the account information report. Let's go back and fetch the group ID. Right-click on the account information dashboard, navigate to Manage, and use Get Folder ID. Copy the text, go back to the flow, and paste the folder ID in the properties. Connect this to the end step. On the right side of the screen, we have four accounts, user A and user C belonging to group A, user B and user D belonging to group B. So when we debug this flow, we would see that all the dashboards would get refreshed because the same dashboard is being displayed for all the users. Let us now debug this flow. As we see that all the four dashboards have been refreshed and a user XYZ account has been added automatically to the dashboards, and the dashboards got refreshed automatically. Now let's go ahead and see how this works if we are specifying a particular group. For that, let's connect to the send refresh report by folder event for group. The folder ID remains the same, so I copy it from the previous step and for the group ID, I will go ahead and fetch the group ID of group A. Before that, I make sure that the user account is deleted so that we can add the user XYZ again. So now I go to the system, security, groups, right-click on group A, manage, and get group ID. I go back to the flow and paste the group ID here. Save this flow. And when I debug this flow, we would see that only the dashboards of group A are refreshing. Similarly, it can also be used for a particular user. Let's say I use the user A to refresh the dashboard. For that, I go ahead and connect the refresh report by folder event for user, give the same folder ID as the previous step. And this time I will pick the user ID for account A or user A. Go to the system, accounts, user A, right click, manage, get account ID. Copy the account ID and paste it in the properties panel of the step. I also make sure that I delete the user before running the flow. Now I go ahead and debug this flow, and we see that only the user A has refreshed its dashboard. Now let us see the next category of steps. Send refresh report by key event. This step takes a constant report key which has to be defined on the page of the report. Send refresh report by key event for group takes the group ID for which the report has to be refreshed and also the key of that particular report. Similarly, send refresh report by key event for user works very similar to the previous steps, but for a particular user whose user ID or account ID has been provided in the properties panel. Let us now see this in action. We initially need a report. So for the report, we would be using the account information report, and we would add this report to an account info page. On the account info page, we drag the report viewer and select the account information report. On the properties of the account information report, scroll down to the behavior and check the report key update. Give the report keys to a custom key, which is my report key in this case. Save the page and add this page to with report keys dashboard. As we see in the dashboard, we have the user xyz@email.com, which needs to be deleted. So I run the flow delete the user account to delete the user xyz. As I have put a send refresh by folder event in this flow, it is refreshing all the dashboards. Now let's go ahead and see how the report key works. So edit this flow and use the following 3 steps by searching in the toolbox. Let us now configure the first step and add a new account to the report. For the first step, we give the key, my report key, as used on the account info page. Save the flow and debug. Upon debugging, we see that the with report keys dashboard has been refreshed for all the users. Similarly, we can use or refresh a dashboard for a particular user by giving their group IDs. So I use the next step and give the constant key my report key. This time I shall use the ID of group B. So I go back to System, Security, Groups, right-click on Group B, Manage, get the group ID. I go back to the flow and give the group ID in the Properties panel. Before debugging the flow, let us just remove the user XYZ email. Now, go ahead and run or debug this flow. So upon debugging, we would see that only the group B have been refreshed. Let us also see the same thing for a particular user. So for that, I would go ahead and give the key as my report key, and I will pick a user to give it in the properties panel. Let me pick user D this time. Get account ID, copy, and give it in the properties panel. Save the flow, delete the account if any, and run or debug the flow. And you see that only the user D's dashboard has been refreshed. Now let's go ahead and look at the next category of steps. Send refresh report by folder and key event. This step is a combination of the previously discussed step using folder and key. In this step, we have to give the folder ID of the dashboard as well as the custom defined key of the report. Similar are the other two steps: send refresh report by folder and key event for group, and send refresh report by folder and key event for user. The first one works for the group that we define, and the second one works for the account ID that we give in the properties panel of the step. Let us now see all of this in action. For that, we would be using the same account information report, the account info page, and report key, which is my report key, as defined for the previous steps. Apart from this, we would be using the folder ID of this dashboard. So let us just get the folder ID of the dashboard. Use the add an account and refresh using report key and folder, and configure the properties of the following steps. For the folder ID, we would paste the folder ID as this on all the three steps. This requires a custom key, which is my report key as defined earlier. The same key can be used on the other steps. For the group, we can get the group ID of either group A or group B. Similarly, for the user, we can get the user account of any user. So let's save this and get the IDs. Get the group ID of group A and paste this in the properties panel. Similarly, I can also get an account ID of a particular user and copy this for the user ID. Let us now see each of this in action. Any accounts that has a user XYZ email can be deleted using the delete a user account flow. Now let's go ahead and run this flow to see all the dashboards being refreshed. Again, we use a delete user account to delete those users. Let's go ahead and use the next step, which is for group. Now, when I debug this flow, we see that only group A has been refreshed. We can also use the user step to see the changes. For that, we connect it to the user step, save the flow, and delete any user accounts that are already existing. Once the user account is deleted, we run this flow to see only the changes are made for user B, as we have given the account ID of user B in the property grid. This is how refreshing dashboards work in Decisions. Thank you.